The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched my family devour the $200 per person tasting menu at my flagship restaurant. Dad kept asking about the molecular gastronomy techniques, while Mom photographed every course for her Facebook. Marcus actually complimented my business acumen between bites of my signature duck confit. These were the same people who spent 29 years calling me the dumb one. "Sweetheart, we're so proud," Mom gushed, raising her wine glass. "Who would have thought our little struggling student would become such an entrepreneur?" I smiled politely while mentally calculating their bill. 3 years ago, when the local newspaper ran that feature about my restaurant empire, everything changed overnight. Suddenly, the daughter they'd written off as learning disabled was a culinary genius. The girl who couldn't pass algebra was now their brilliant businesswoman. But let me tell you how the family failure became their salvation. Growing up in suburban Texas with a high school principal for a father and a college professor for a mother meant one thing: academic achievement was everything. Report cards were displayed like trophies. Marcus's valedictorian speech still hung framed in their hallway. My dyslexia diagnosis at 8. "She just needs to try harder." The jokes began early, like really early. "Don't ask her to help with homework," Dad would tell Marcus's friends. "She's more of a hands-on learner." He'd make air quotes around, hands-on like it was some kind of disability. Family dinners became academic performance reviews where Marcus recited his latest achievements while I pushed food around my plate. The worst part: they genuinely believed they were helping. Mom would spend hours trying to tutor me, growing increasingly frustrated when I couldn't grasp concepts that came naturally to Marcus. "It's like she's not even trying," she'd whisper to Dad, thinking I couldn't hear. But I was trying. God, I was trying so hard. High school was torture. Having your principal father announce your remedial class placements over morning announcements felt like public execution. "Some students need extra support," he'd say during parent meetings, his eyes finding mine across the room. "We can't all be destined for Harvard." Marcus got into Harvard naturally. The kitchen became my sanctuary. While Marcus studied for AP exams, I experimented with recipes. While he collected academic awards, I learned to make perfect hollandaise. Nobody noticed because cooking wasn't real intelligence. That changed when I sold my restaurant chain for $3.2 million last month. Now they notice everything. The academic obsession started before I could even spell my own name properly. Our house in suburban Texas looked like a shrine to intellectual achievement. Marcus's honor roll certificates covered the refrigerator. His debate team trophies lined the mantel. My participation ribbons from elementary school art contests. Those went straight into a drawer. "Education is the great equalizer," Dad would announce at dinner, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "In this family, we value intelligence above all else." He'd glance at my latest C- math test lying on the counter and sigh. "Some of us just need to work harder to find it." The parent-teacher conferences were exercises in public humiliation. Dad would sit across from Mrs. Henderson, my third-grade teacher, nodding gravely as she explained my processing issues. Mom would take notes like she was documenting a medical condition. "She's clearly bright," Mrs. Henderson would say diplomatically, "but she learns differently." "Different isn't an excuse," Dad would respond. "Different is a challenge to overcome." When the school psychologist suggested I might have dyslexia, my parents treated it like a personal attack on their parenting. "She just needs structure," Mom insisted. "More discipline, more practice." They hired 3 different tutors that year. Each one quit after a few months, frustrated by my parents' refusal to acknowledge that traditional teaching methods weren't working. Marcus, meanwhile, was reading chapter books in kindergarten. He'd sit at the kitchen table after school, blazing through homework while I struggled with basic addition. "Look how focused Marcus is," Mom would say, ruffling his hair. "He's going to be something special." The implication was clear. I wasn't. 4th grade brought the remedial label. Dad had to sign off on my placement in the slower reading group. I watched him grip his pen tighter as he scrawled his signature, his jaw clenched. "This is temporary," he told me. "You're going to work twice as hard as everyone else until you catch up." But I never caught up. Math remained a foreign language. Reading comprehension felt like trying to solve puzzles with missing pieces. While Marcus collected academic awards, I collected disappointed looks and heavy sighs. The worst part was how they talked about me when they thought I wasn't listening. "She's just not college material," Mom would whisper to Dad after particularly brutal homework sessions. "Maybe she'll find something practical to do with her hands." They said practical like it was a consolation prize. Family gatherings became showcases for Marcus's brilliance. Aunts and uncles would ask about his latest achievements while I sat quietly in the corner. "And what about you, honey?" they'd ask as an afterthought. "How's school going?" "She's working hard," Dad would answer for me, "still figuring out her strengths." I was 12 when I realized my strength wasn't going to be found in a textbook. High school should have been a fresh start. Instead, it became my personal hell because my father was the principal. Every morning, I'd walk through those doors knowing that my academic struggles were public knowledge. Dad made sure of it. During faculty meetings, he'd discuss struggling students while making eye contact with my teachers. "We need to be realistic about certain students' capabilities," he'd say, and everyone knew he was talking about his own daughter. The humiliation was systematic and deliberate. When I failed my sophomore algebra test, Dad didn't just ground me. He had me moved to the math support class during lunch period, ensuring everyone saw me walking to the remedial room while they headed to the cafeteria. "Consequences have to be visible," he explained to Mom that night. "Otherwise, she'll never learn." Marcus was captain of the debate team, editor of the school newspaper, and bound for valedictorian. His achievements were announced over the intercom weekly. "Congratulations to Marcus Williams for his acceptance to Harvard's pre-law program," Dad's voice would boom through the speakers. "The Williams family is incredibly proud." He never mentioned my name over those speakers, not once. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, called me into her office junior year. She was kind but direct. "Your father and I have been discussing your post-graduation plans," she said gently. "Given your academic performance, we think trade school might be the most realistic option." Trade school, the words hit like a slap. "You're clearly talented with your hands," she continued. "Culinary arts, maybe, or cosmetology. There's no shame in practical careers." That night at dinner, Dad presented the guidance counselor's recommendation like it was a medical diagnosis. "Mrs. Rodriguez thinks culinary school might be appropriate," he said, not looking at me. "It's practical," Mom nodded sadly. "At least you'd have a skill," she said, "something to fall back on." Marcus looked up from his AP biology homework. "Cooking's actually pretty cool," he said, trying to be supportive. "Like chemistry, but edible." Even his kindness felt condescending. The kitchen had always been my escape, but now it felt like a prison sentence. While Marcus studied for SATs, I experimented with recipes from Mom's old cookbooks. While he collected college acceptance letters, I learned to make perfect pasta from scratch. Senior year was a parade of Marcus's achievements. Valedictorian speech, full scholarship to Harvard, acceptance to their pre-law program. The local newspaper ran a feature about him titled "Local Student Bound for Greatness." Dad kept copies in his office. My graduation was different. I walked across that stage with a 2.3 GPA and a community college acceptance letter. Dad shook my hand professionally like I was any other mediocre student. "Congratulations," he said formally. "I hope you find success in your chosen path." Chosen path, like I had any choice at all. The summer before community college, I worked at Rosa's Diner downtown. The owner, Isabella, was a 60-year-old woman who'd immigrated from Mexico and built her restaurant from nothing. She watched me work for 2 weeks before pulling me aside. "You have good hands," she said in accented English. "Natural instincts." "This isn't just a summer job for you, is it?" I shook my head, tears threatening. "Good," she said firmly, "because I'm going to teach you everything I know." For the first time in my life, someone saw potential in me that wasn't apologetic or conditional. Community college felt like academic purgatory, but the culinary program was different. Chef Martinez, the program director, didn't care about my GPA or my father's disappointed sighs. He cared about knife skills, flavor profiles, and whether I could handle the pressure of a professional kitchen. "Cooking isn't about being book smart," he told our class on the first day. "It's about understanding ingredients, respecting techniques, and having the courage to create something beautiful from nothing." I thrived in ways I'd never imagined possible. While Marcus struggled through his first semester at Harvard, complaining about the workload during his weekly calls home, I was learning to break down whole chickens and master mother sauces. My hands, which had fumbled with pencils and calculators, moved with confidence around knives and sauté pans. Isabella became my unofficial mentor. After my morning classes, I'd head straight to Rosa's Diner, where she taught me the secrets that textbooks couldn't capture. "Feel the dough," she'd say, guiding my hands. "It tells you when it's ready. Books can't teach you that." My parents treated my culinary education like an expensive hobby. "At least she's learning something practical," Mom would tell her friends. "Maybe she'll open a little cafe someday." The word "little" always stung. Even my dreams had to be diminished in their eyes, but I was dreaming bigger than they knew. The first cooking competition I entered was the county fair's amateur chef contest. I made Isabella's mole recipe, the one she'd spent months teaching me. The judges were local restaurant owners and food bloggers. When they announced my first place finish, I called home immediately. "That's nice, sweetheart," Mom said distractedly. Marcus just made Dean's List again. I stopped calling home with my victories after that. The wins kept coming. Regional competitions, culinary school scholarships, recognition from local food critics. My instructor submitted my portfolio to the Culinary Institute of America. When the acceptance letter arrived with a partial scholarship, I cried in the parking lot. "You're really going to New York?" Dad asked when I told them over dinner. "For cooking school? It's one of the best culinary programs in the country," I explained. "This is a big opportunity." Marcus looked up from his law school applications. "That's actually pretty impressive," he said. "The CIA is like the Harvard of cooking schools." Dad's expression tightened. "Let's not get carried away with comparisons." Even my achievements had to be qualified, diminished, kept in their proper place. The goodbye dinner before I left for New York was awkward. Mom had made my favorite childhood meal, but the conversation kept circling back to Marcus's pre-law internship and his plans for summer abroad. My culinary school acceptance felt like a footnote. "Just remember," Dad said as I loaded my car, "if this doesn't work out, you can always come back and finish your associate's degree." "It'll work out," I said quietly. "We'll see," he replied. New York changed everything. The Culinary Institute pushed me harder than any academic program ever had, but I rose to meet every challenge. My knife skills impressed instructors. My palate developed sophistication. My creativity flourished in ways that had been impossible in traditional classrooms. I graduated with honors and job offers from 3 prestigious restaurants. The girl who couldn't pass algebra had mastered the complex chemistry of professional cooking. The remedial student had earned recognition from James Beard Award winners. But when I called home to share the news, Mom was busy helping Marcus prepare for his LSAT. "That's wonderful, honey," she said. "We're so proud of your little cooking accomplishments." Little, always little. I decided then that my accomplishments wouldn't stay little much longer. The restaurant world in Austin was brutal, but I was ready for it. After 2 years working under Chef Williams at his acclaimed downtown restaurant, I'd saved every penny and learned every aspect of the business. At 25, I was ready to take the leap that would change everything. My first restaurant was a tiny 800-square-foot space in East Austin, back when the neighborhood was still rough around the edges. I called it Fuego and focused on elevated Mexican fusion, combining Isabella's traditional techniques with the molecular gastronomy I'd learned in New York. The rent was cheap, the equipment was second-hand, but the food was extraordinary. Opening night was chaos. The POS system crashed, we ran out of our signature mole halfway through service, and I burned my hand on a sauté pan. But the food blogger from the Austin Chronicle was there, and her review changed my life. "Chef Williams has created something magical in this tiny space," she wrote. "Her mole Negro is a revelation, and her deconstructed tamale challenges everything you think you know about Mexican cuisine. This is destination dining in the most unexpected package." The review went viral. Reservations started booking weeks in advance. Food Network called about featuring us on diners, drive-ins, and dives. My parents saw the article when Mom's book club friend forwarded it to her. "We saw your little restaurant got a nice review," Mom said during our monthly phone call. "That's so exciting for you." I didn't tell them about the James Beard nomination that came 3 months later. Success bred success. Within a year, I was scouting a second location. Investors lined up after seeing our numbers. Fuego West launched in a trendy shopping district, 3 times the size, with a full bar and expanded menu. I was invited to be a featured chef at the Austin Food and Wine Festival. Meanwhile, Marcus was drowning in law school. "I don't know how you make it look so easy," he said. If only he knew. I was working 18-hour days, running 2 kitchens, managing staff, designing menus, and learning the business side on the fly. Then came Fuego Central, 200 seats, open kitchen, wine cellar. Texas Monthly called it the most important restaurant opening in a decade. That's when the acquisition offers rolled in. At 28, I was offered $2.8 million for everything. "Think about it," my lawyer advised. "This could set you up for life." But I wasn't ready to sell, not yet. 2 more offers came in the following months, each one higher than the last. The final offer from Meridian Hospitality was impossible to ignore, $3.2 million for the restaurants, plus a 5-year consulting contract worth another $800,000, plus equity in the expanded chain. I was going to be a millionaire before my 30th birthday. The funny thing was, I didn't tell my family about any of it. They still thought I was running a little restaurant in Austin. Marcus was finally graduating law school, and that was dominating every family conversation. His job interviews, his potential starting salary, his bright future in corporate law. Meanwhile, I was quietly building an empire they couldn't even imagine. The day I signed the acquisition papers, I called Isabella first. "Mija," she said, crying on the phone, "I always knew you were destined for greatness." Then I called my parents. "That's nice, sweetheart," Mom said when I told her about expanding to other cities. "Marcus just got an offer from a big firm in Dallas." They had no idea their remedial daughter had just become wealthier than their golden child would ever be. The Austin Business Journal article changed everything. "Local chef sells restaurant empire for $3.2 million, ran on the front page of the business section, complete with a photo of me signing the acquisition papers. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with congratulations from industry colleagues and old culinary school friends. My family's reaction was different. "Why didn't you tell us?" Mom's voice was sharp when she called that evening. "We had to find out from Janet Morrison at the grocery store that our daughter is some kind of millionaire. I didn't think you'd be interested," I said honestly. "You never seemed to care about my restaurant business before." "Of course we care. We're your parents." Dad's voice came through the speaker. "This is incredible news. We're so proud of you." The sudden shift was jarring. These were the same people who dismissed my culinary achievements as little cooking accomplishments for years. Now they wanted to plan a celebration dinner, invite the extended family, make a big announcement. "We should have a party at the country club," Mom suggested. "Show everyone what our daughter has accomplished." Our daughter, not the remedial one or the practical one. Our daughter. The family dinner they organized was surreal. Aunts and uncles who'd barely acknowledged my existence suddenly wanted to hear all about my business acumen and entrepreneurial spirit. Grandpa, who'd once suggested I consider secretarial school, now called me the smart one who saw opportunity. But the real shock came 3 weeks later when Marcus called, his voice strained and desperate. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Can we meet somewhere private?" We met at a coffee shop near his apartment in Dallas. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect hair disheveled. The golden boy was tarnished. "I didn't get the partnership," he said without preamble. "Morrison and Associates passed me over. After 3 years of killing myself for them, they gave it to someone else." "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. "That must be devastating." "It gets worse." He stared into his coffee cup. "I have some gambling debts, poker games with other lawyers, sports betting. I thought I could pay it off when I made partner, but now—" "How much?" $47,000. I nearly choked on my latte. "Marcus, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking I was smart enough to beat the system," he said bitterly. "Turns out being valedictorian doesn't help much at a poker table." The irony wasn't lost on me. The family genius had gambled away more money than most people make in a year, while the family failure had built a multi-million-dollar business. "I need help," he continued. "Mom and Dad don't know about the gambling. They think I'm just disappointed about the partnership, but if I don't pay this back soon—" He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. The golden child was about to fall from grace in spectacular fashion. That same week, I got another call, this time from Mom. "Your father had to take early retirement," she said, her voice tight with stress. "There was an incident at school, some accusations about grade manipulation for athletes. Nothing proven, but the district thought it was best if he stepped down." The principal who'd built his career on academic integrity was being forced out under a cloud of scandal. The man who'd lectured me about consequences was facing his own. "We're having some financial difficulties," Mom continued. "The retirement package isn't what we expected, and we made some bad investments last year, lost most of our savings." The family that had built their identity on being successful, intelligent, and superior was crumbling, and suddenly they were all looking to me, the family disappointment, for salvation. "We were wondering," Mom said carefully, "if you might be able to help us out, just temporarily until we get back on our feet." The girl they'd called remedial was now their only hope. I told them I'd think about it, but I already knew what I was going to do. I chose Fuego Central for our family meeting, the restaurant I'd built from nothing in the space that had once seemed impossible to afford. The irony felt appropriate. They arrived dressed like they were attending a business meeting. Dad wore his best suit, the one he'd worn to Marcus's graduation. Mom carried a leather portfolio, probably filled with financial documents and carefully rehearsed talking points. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept in days. "This place is incredible," Mom gushed, looking around at the exposed brick walls and open kitchens. "So sophisticated. You've really built something special here." The waitstaff treated me like the owner I was, bringing wine selections and updating me on the evening specials. My family watched with newfound respect as I discussed menu changes with the head chef and approved the wine pairings. "We'll have the 7-course tasting menu," I told our server, "and bring the wine pairings." "Of course, Chef Williams," she replied. "Should I put this on your house account?" "No," I said clearly. "Regular bill, please." Dad's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't comment. The meal was perfect. Each course showcased the techniques I'd spent years perfecting, the creativity they dismissed as playing with food. They praised every dish, asked intelligent questions about ingredients and preparation methods, treated me like the expert I'd become. "The mole is extraordinary," Dad said, savoring the complex sauce. "How many ingredients are in this?" 37, I replied. "It takes 2 days to make properly." 2 days. Mom looked impressed. "That's such dedication, such attention to detail." The same attention to detail they dismissed when I spent hours perfecting recipes as a teenager. After dessert, they finally got to the point. Dad cleared his throat and pulled out a folder. "We've prepared a proposal," he said, sliding papers across the table. "A business arrangement that would benefit everyone." I glanced at the documents. They'd calculated exactly how much they needed. $150,000 to cover Marcus's gambling debts, Dad's legal fees, and their immediate living expenses. They'd even included a payment plan with interest. "We know you're successful now," Mom said earnestly, "and we want you to know how proud we are. We always knew you had potential." "Did you?" I asked quietly. "Of course, you were always creative, always determined. We just wanted to make sure you found the right path." The revisionist history was breathtaking. The same people who'd called me remedial and suggested trade school were now claiming they'd always believed in me. "Here's what I remember," I said, pulling out my own folder. "I remember being called the dumb one at every family gathering. I remember you telling Mrs. Rodriguez that I wasn't college material. I remember Dad announcing my remedial class placements over the school intercom." Their faces grew uncomfortable. "I saved everything," I continued, spreading out old report cards and printed emails. "Every disappointed comment, every suggestion that I lower my expectations, every time you told people I was just not academic." Marcus shifted in his seat. "We were trying to be realistic." "Realistic," I interrupted. "You were protecting your own image. The principal and the professor couldn't have a learning disabled daughter. It reflected poorly on your intelligence." "That's not fair," Mom protested. "We did everything we could to help you." "You did everything you could to fix me," I corrected. "There's a difference." I pulled out the final document, the acquisition contract showing the $3.2 million sale price. "This is what you called little cooking accomplishments," I said. "This is what you dismissed as a hobby. While Marcus was failing at poker and Dad was losing his job over grade manipulation, I was building something real." The silence stretched uncomfortably. "Now you want my help," I continued. "The family failure is supposed to bail out the family successes. The irony is perfect." "We're family," Dad said desperately. "Family helps family." "You're right," I said, signaling for the check. "Family does help family, which is why I'm going to help you learn the same lesson you taught me." I placed the bill on the table, $847 for dinner and wine. "This is what consequences look like," I said, standing up. "Figure it out yourselves." I walked away from that table, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. 6 months later, I'm in my penthouse overlooking Lady Bird Lake, reviewing my first cookbook deal, From Fire to Table. Random House is offering a $400K advance and a 15-city tour. Consulting with Meridian has been a dream, 12 new Fuego locations across 3 states, and my equity is now worth over $2 million. Family has been complicated. Marcus finally admitted his gambling debts. Dad took out a second mortgage to cover them. "Being the golden child was a prison," Marcus said. "Dad's retirement came early after a grading scandal." "I was wrong to dismiss you," he said. "Too late, but I heard him. Mom still calls my success luck, but asks for help. Meanwhile, Isabella mentors young chefs. Diego runs 3 locations. Ryan, my boyfriend, says, 'You've become who you were meant to be.' He's right. They called me a failure. Now they brag. I know my worth."